The teachings of Rabbi Ephraim Sprecher, Dean of Students at Diaspora Yeshiva on Mount Zion, Jerusalem.
Shemot 18:1. Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. What a yichus. Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law was a Kohen Midyan. What does that mean? The Pope. The Pope of Midyan. Boy, it's a real yichus that Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law is what? A former Pope. Why is the Torah putting him down? You're not allowed to remind a Baal Tshuva, you're not allowed to remind a ger of his former past. And how does Moshe Rabbeinu feel about that his father-in-law is the Kohen Midyan, Pope John the 23rd? I mean, what kind of yichus is that for Moshe Rabbeinu that the Torah gives him that title? And we know, the Maimonides tells us, and the Gemara in Bava Metzia 58, it's forbidden to remind a ger tzedek of his what? Former past. So what's going on over here? Right? What's going on over here? Why call him Kohen Midyan when he converted to Judaism? He's no longer a pope.
At this point in time,
he was still the pope. He was still the pope.
Yeah.
When he was father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu, he retained his title pope, right? But we know he came and became a ger tzedek. And you have a parsha in the Torah named after him. And not just any parsha, but the parsha of what? Matan Torah. So what was a message in here somewhere, Abraham, right? There's a message here. So Maimonides tells us in Hilchos Tshuva, when is it a terrible sin to remind a ger tzedek of his what? Of his evil past? If it's levaishoi, as Sarah said, if you want to put him down, you want to shame him, then it's a sin. But if you want to applaud him, bravo, bravo, look at you now, where did you come from? Right? Look at you now. But where did you come from? This is not a put down. This is not in order to shame him or to shtech him. This is to applaud him. And then that's a positive. If Yisro can do it, anybody can do it. Even though he was a former pope and he worshipped all our idolatry, he became the great ger tzedek, the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he has a parsha in the Torah named after him. This is he's a role model. This is a badge of honor for him. It's not a put down. It's not a put down at all. This is a title of honor. He became Moshe's father-in-law despite being a former pope, or perhaps what? Because. Huh? He was a seeker of truth, Avi. He was an honest person. And we know trial and error, only by, I made this up, Sarah, see if you like it. Only by trial and error do we get better. Only by trial and error do we get better. So if Yitro would not have tried all of those idols that he worshipped, he never would have become better. It's only by trial and error, Gershon, do we become better. And therefore, what?
Or watching somebody else's trial and error.
Shevel yipol tzaddik v'kam. The tzaddik falls 7 times, a pasuk where in Mishlei, but he keeps what? Keeps getting up. Avram, where is he? Onwards and upwards. Right? There's an amazing Gemara in Gittin, page 43. Ein adam omed al Torah el nichshal behen. A person can really not get attached to the Torah unless he first stumbles. Gittin 43a. Yehuda, you understand this? Ein adam omed al Torah el nichshal behen. Person cannot really become attached to Torah if he didn't make mistakes first. Wow. Who taught us that? Avi. Yisro. And therefore he has a parsha in the Torah named after him. He was a searcher of truth, and the Torah appreciates someone that seeks the truth and is willing to say what? I made boo-boos, and now I'm better for it. That's the great message of what? Of Yisro. Rashi says he had 7 names. Can you imagine his Tudat Zahut? Huh? He had 7 names he had. One of them was Ruel, the English name Raul. Ruel means friend of God. And Chovav means what? Lover of God. Yitro, Yeter, he added a parsha in the Torah. And he loved the Torah. And he became this great Ger Tzedek, the role model of Klal Yisrael. We had two great Ger Tzedeks in Tanakh. Yisro is one of them. And who's the other one? Ruth. The other one is Ruth. So isn't it strange? Ruth is a very popular name among Jews, right?
Mother's name.
Right? Ruth is a very popular name. And yet Yitro, the great Ger Tzedek that he was, we don't find we call our kids Yitro. David, why not? Jethro Tull. Jethro Bodine. Jethro Bodine. But they're not Jews. Why don't we name our kids Yitro? This is a question on the table, Avram. Such a great tzedek. He has a Parshat of Torah named after him, no less.
Oh.
And yet we don't name our kids Yisro, but we do name our kids Ruth. What's the difference?
Because he represented idols with that name.
What about Ruth? What about Ruth? Ruth was a great man, Yitro. A Parshat of Torah named after him.
He didn't stay.
So Sarah's saying something very, very profound. You look in Pashas B'halotcha, Moshe Rabbeinu begs Yisro after he converts to stay. Stay and come with us to Pisgat Zev. And he says, no, I have to go back to Midian. I can't leave my family, I can't leave my possessions. He says, you can be a good frum Jew even in Chutz La'aretz. And he goes back. We know in the Torah, when the two parshas next door to each other, there has to be a great connection. After Parshas Ba'aloscha, where Moshe pleads with Yisro to go, and he doesn't go, right after they have the Parsha of Shlach Lecha, the Parsha of the Meraglim. Avi, what's the connection between Yisro refusing to make Aliyah, I'll remain in Borough Park, in Midian and be a good Jew, and then you have the Parsha of the Meraglim, where they speak against Eretz Yisrael. What's the connection? So Rav Soloveitchik says something incredible. He says, Yisro was a great man. A great man, people watch the way he talks and the way he behaves. The Meraglim are watching this guy. Yisro, this great man who has a parsha in the Torah named after him, says you can be a good frum Jew even in Midian. That's what he said. Even in the Teaneck. So the Meraglim said, if Yisro doesn't cherish living in Eretz Yisrael, why can't we stay in the Midbar? You could be a frum Jew in the Midbar also, or Mitzrayim also, Midian also. So that was Yisro. What did Ruth say? I have to go with you to Eretz Yisrael. I can't be a frum Jew in Midian or Moab. A complete frum Jew is Eretz Yisrael. So Yisro said you could be a frum Jew in Chutz La'aretz, and the Meraglim saw that, and it put a bee in their bonnet, and it caused this disaster. But Ruth, she's the one that says to be a complete loyal Jew, you have to go to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, my humble opinion, therefore we name our kids Ruth, but we do not name our kids Yisro, even though he was a great man, because to be a complete loyal Jew, a fulfilled Jew, you have to come to Eretz Yisrael. And Yisro said you can be okay, a loyal Jew in Midian as well. Unlike Ruth, who said, I'm only going to Eretz Yisrael. Yes, Gershom?
I think I mentioned last time that it says Shlech Lecha Anashim Yitaru Ha'aretz.
If what?
Shlech Lecha Anashim Yitaru Ha'aretz.
Right, to spy out the land.
So the letters Yitaru are Yitro.
Do what?
The same letters for Yitaru are Yitro.
Wow, to spy out the land. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, so that's
wow.
Maybe a remnant that he went with it.
What? Well, you're saying very good. To spy out the land, the spies learned from Yitro's behavior that you can be okay, or you can be a complete Jew, even a Chutz La'aretz. Gershom said something incredible, that the letters Yitro is the same as Yituru, to spy out the land. That's amazing. They learned from him. Look at this great Yitro. Parshat the Torah named after me, he says you don't have to go to Eretz Yisrael to be a complete loyal Jew, so why can't we stay in the Midbar? Or even go back to Egypt and be frum? Thank you for that. Wow, Yitro, Yituru, the same letters. So the spies, Yud, Taf, Reish, Vav, the same letters Yitro to spy out the land. The spies learned from Yitro that what Eretz Yisrael is not so central in Judaism, which is false.
Or this Parshat, which is the Ten Commandments,
right,
teaches us that to be a treasured nation, to be the representatives of God, you got to have your own country.
Yes.
So it's the exact opposite of the Ten Commandments in this Parshat. There's also no accident.
Okay, no coincidences, right? That's right.
It's central to the Torah.
Nochon, that's right, that's right.
Rabbi,
Also,
the thing that adds to that is the fact that Moshe requests Yitro to be the eyes and ears.
Right. Nochon, that's right.
So
now again, you have the...
If Yitro had been one of the spies, history might have been completely different. He might have influenced them
right.
the opposite way.
Yeah, but they saw from his behavior that Eretz Yisrael is not so central to Judaism. A great man like him says, I'll go back to Midian. Right? It's pretty amazing. Now, Yisro says, Baruch Hashem over here. He wasn't Jewish yet. In Exodus 18:10, he says, Baruch Hashem. It's amazing that in the Chumash, David, there are 4 people that say Baruch Hashem, and all 4 are not Jews yet, are not Jews. The first one was Noach. Noach said Baruch Hashem. The second one was Eliezer, Eved Avraham, said Baruch Hashem. The third one was Lavan. In Parshat Yitro said Baruch Hashem. And the fourth one is Yisro, Baruch Hashem. So 4 people in the Chumash say Baruch Hashem, and all of them are not Jewish. Which reminds me, Yitzchak Rabin's funeral, there's a lot of speakers. The only one who mentioned Hashem's name was the non-Jewish speaker, Wild Bill Clinton. Evelyn, you getting it? I remember, I guess it struck me. Many speakers at Rabin's funeral, but the only one to mention God's name was the non-Jew Bill Clinton. So there's something about, I don't know what the message is over here, but there's something, right? Now, in the 10 Commandments, there are 620 letters, Avi. If you count the 10 Commandments, there are 620 letters, which is Gematria Keter. Keter in Hebrew means a crown. Kaf, Taf, Resh is Gematria how much? 620. So 620 letters. Why 620 letters? So each letter represents a mitzvah. So the Baal Turim says 613, each letter represents a mitzvah. 613 plus 7 Noahide laws. So even the Noahide laws gets a letter in the 10 Commandments. So the question is, aren't the 7 Noahide laws part of what? The Torah? So why did God have to speak 7 extra letters in the 10 Commandments for the 7 Noahide laws when the 7 Noahide laws are part and parcel of what? Of the Taryag Mitzvot. You had a question on the table?
We don't say it's the 7 laws, we say it's the 7 rabbinic.
That's something else. That's another. But going with this for the Baal Turim, he says that the 7 extra letters in the 10 Commandments, they are to symbolize the 7 Noahide laws. But the question is, the 7 Noahide laws, Avram, are part of the 613, right? Not to eat flesh and blood from living animal, and not to blaspheme, not to steal, to set up courts of law, not to worship idols, not to commit adultery, right? And not to commit murder. That's part of the Taryag Mitzvot. So the question is, why did God have to utter 7 extra letters for the 7 Noahide laws when they are part of the 613? That's the question on the table. The answer is as follows. God purposely spoke 7 extra letters of the 10 Commandments that He is giving the Torah to the whole world. Not just because if it was just for us, Avi, there should only be 613 letters in the 10 Commandments, each letter representing a mitzvah. The 7 extra letters that God spoke extra, that the 7 Noahide laws are specifically for the non-Jews, because God is the God of all mankind, not just for Jews. So, according to the Baal Turim, there was a double revelation. For us, 613, and then an extra revelation, an extra 7 letters, keep the 7 and go to heaven. That's pretty amazing. Because he gave the Torah for us, but he also gave the 7 Noahide laws, especially for what? For all mankind. So in order for us to get to heaven, we got to keep the 613. For a non-Jew, it's keep the 7 and go to heaven. So the 10 Commandments there's no such thing as 10 Commandments. It never says 10 Commandments. It says Aseret HaDvarim. What does that mean? 10 utterances, 10 sayings, right? 10 Commandments never says. That's the movie. But the book is much better than the movie. In fact, the book is so good, I worship the author. Get it? I worship the author. Like that, right? But Aseret HaDvarim, and you see, there are no 10 commandments. There are 613 commandments. The Aseret HaDvarim, Avi, are 10 topics, or 10 headings, which contain what? 613. The same thing with the 7 Noahide laws. There are 7 categories, because there are many more than 7. For instance, the one about Gezel. One of the 7 Noahide laws is not to steal. That includes stealing, swindling, right? Cheating, kidnapping, embezzlement. It's many more than 7. It's a category. And the one about Shvichat Damim, not to spill blood, one of the 7 Noahide laws, that includes what? Murder. It includes abortion. It includes character assassination. Killing me softly with words. Killing me softly with words. So if a non-Jew speaks slander and embarrasses somebody, he's like spilling blood, character assassination. The one of Gilead Ayot, the one of sexual immorality, that includes what? Adultery. It includes incest. It includes lesbianism, homosexuality. So it's many more. So it's not so easy to be a righteous Gentile, right? The one dinim, the category of setting up dinim. What does dinim mean? Courts of law. He has to set up, non-Jews have to set up a humane society with a police force to enforce the Noahide religion. So again, just like the 10 commandments are not 10 commandments, there are 10 categories. The 7, which contain 613, the 7 Noahide laws are 7 categories, which contain many more mitzvot as you break them down. So Judaism is the only other religions, Chanoch, that say my way or the highway, right? The only religion that doesn't say that is Judaism. Judaism says Judaism for Jews, and for non-Jews, keep the 7, go to heaven. The oldest religion of mankind was not Judaism. It was what? Noahidism, right? We forget that. The 7 Noahide laws?
Murder, no.
No, let's start with Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. That's a good way to remember. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, and the big 3. Aleph is Evim and Achai, not to eat flesh or blood of a living animal. Bet is Berchat Hashem, not to blaspheme God or the Jewish people. Gezel, stealing, kidnapping, swindling, cheating. 4 dinim, setting up a righteous court system with honest judges, not corrupt judges. Then you have Avodah Zarah, not to worship idols. Then you have Gilead Ayot, sexual immorality. And number 7 is what? Shvichat Damim, not to spill blood, not to embarrass anybody. When you embarrass someone, it's like you're spilling his blood. His face turns colors, right? Ben Yonah says clearly, if a non-Jew shames somebody, he's spilling his guy's blood. Now again, we have current events in the Parsha, Rabbi Abraham. It's amazing. Take a look at Shmot 18, verses 20 and 21, where Yisro gives advice. The non-Jewish father-in-law gives his Jewish son-in-law advice to appoint judges, Anshe Emet. What type of judges? Anshe Emet. What's the headlines in the Jerusalem Post yesterday, David? Corrupt judges. There's a sex scandal in the judicial system. Isn't that incredible? So the Torah says, no, we don't want judges involved in sex scandals. Current events in the Parsha. We want judges that are Yirei Elokim, God-fearing, and Anshe Emet. What does Anshe Emet mean?
Truthful.
Truthful, God-fearing, not willing to sell their bodies or for money or for sex or for anything to become a judge. It's amazing how the Parsha of the week always speaks to what's going on in the headlines in Eretz Israel. Now, where does the idea of ladies first come from? Who invented ladies first?
Hashem.
Hashem. How do we know that? By Matan Torah. Look at Shemot 19. Shemot 19, verse 3. It says, Moses went up to God, and God called to him, and he said, so shall you speak to the Bet Yaakov, and say to Bnei Yisrael. So Rashi said, who are the Bet Yaakov? That's what the Bet Yaakov school system. Women. They are the women. God is a gentleman. First offer the Torah to the Bet Yaakov, and then give it to the sons of Israel. Ladies first. Pretty amazing. God is a gentleman. And Rashi points out, when you're speaking the Torah to women, it's Tomar. Tomar's Loshen Raka. How do you say that in English? Soft, easy language. But when you teach men the Taged, you have to be tough as nails. Women, they understand even when you're what? Softly. Speak softly. But to men, to get them to do the right thing, we got to verstop the cup. You have to, the Taged, hard as nails. Pretty amazing Rashi over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu, God speaks the Ten Commandments, and we say, Naseh v'nishma. What does Naseh mean? We'll do it, and then we will what?
Learn.
Hear it. Why don't you say Nishma v'naseh? Avi, shouldn't we say Nishma v'naseh? Why Naseh before Nishma? Why do it? Remember Nike, just do it? Why do it, and then we will what?
Learn.
Then we will hear it. Why? Why not?
Because it's, I don't know.
It's what?
Everyone makes such a big question out of that. Obviously, he had already started the Esther Dibros and the mountain caught on fire and everything. He says, okay, we'll do what you said up to now.
We'll take it. What?
We'll do what you said till now.
Right.
We'll hear and do what you say afterwards.
Why do you put on the Tefillin Shal Yad before the Tefillin Shal Rosh?
You do things with your hand.
Naseh v'nishma. The Yad represents what? Action, doing. So first we put on the Tefillin Shal Yad. That's the Naseh. We'll do it. Then we put the Tefillin Shal Rosh v'nishma. After we do it, then we will try to understand why. But first, a Jew has to do.
It also teaches us Hakaras Tov.
Go ahead.
We are. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim.
Right.
I did this for you. I did that for you.
Right.
He wants us to just follow him because it's Hakaras Tov.
Hakaras Tov.
He's done so much for us.
Right.
Already. So
right.
It gives us the opportunity to say, okay, whatever you say, because you've already proved you've done so much for us.
Right.
So he gave us the opportunity to say, we'll do before we learn.
We'll do it, and then we will try to understand. Right? And therefore, there's something amazing. The Tefillin Shal Rosh have 4 parshas in it. Rashi and Parshas both says that the 4 parshas of Tefillin Shal Rosh represent the 4 sons.
Right.
Even the Rasha has a parsha of Tefillin, has a section. So the Tefillin Shal Rosh has the 4 parshas and 4 separate sections. The Tefillin Shal Yad has the same 4 parshas, but all on one scroll. What's the message? What's the message? The message is that Jews love to debate and argue. So when it comes to intellectual debate, we respect everybody's opinion. Even the Rasha has a section of the Tefillin in the Rosh, a separate section. The Rosh represents intellect, debate. That's good. But when it comes to doing, we all have to be on the same page. When it comes to doing, you have to stop the debate. The Naseh before the Nishma. I'll listen to you, and I'll debate you, and I respect your opinion, but first, Naseh. First, do it. So the 4 sections of the Tefillin on the hand, which represents what? doing is all 4 on one scroll. The not 10 Commandments. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Exodus 20, Pasuk 1. I am Hashem your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt. So the Gemara in Shabbos asked the question, how do you say I in Hebrew? Ani. So God knows Hebrew, right? So why didn't he say Ani Hashem Elokecha? Like he says throughout the Torah, he says Ani Hashem Elokechem. In Shema, I am Hashem your God who took you out. Ani, Ani, Ani. Why over here, Yosef, when he introduces himself to us, he doesn't say Ani, he says Anochi. Anochi. See the word Anochi? So the Gemara in Shabbos, page 109, makes an incredible statement that the word Anochi is an acronym. FBI, CIA, remember NYPD? It's an acronym. Now remember, the Hebrew and Aramaic are intertwined languages. You have many Aramaic words in the Chumash as well. So the Gemara in Shabbos 109 says the word Anochi, if you look at the word in Hebrew, Shemot 20 verse 2, Anochi, it's an acronym. The Aleph stands for Anah. Anah means I, Nafshi, my soul, Kaf, Ktavit, I wrote it, Yud Yahavit. In Aramaic, Yahav means to what? To give. So Anochi is an acronym, Anah Nafshi. God says, I, my soul. Ktavit, I wrote my soul into the Torah. You have it. You have it. You have it. So God says, you want to possess my soul, Kaviyachol? Where is it? It's in the Torah. And therefore, it doesn't say Ani when God introduces himself. He says the word Anochi, Anah Nafshi. God says, I, my soul, Ktavit, the Kaf, I wrote it, Yahavit. Yahav in Aramaic means to give. The word Yahav, to give in Aramaic, and the word Ahava, Avi, the same word, same root, Hav, Ahava. In Hebrew, Yahav means to give in Aramaic, Ahava means to love. Why the same root? Because when you love somebody, you want to give to him.
If you want to search for truth, therefore you search for the Torah.
Uh-huh. So God says...
That's why Yitro was search for truth and he found the Torah.
Right? So God introduced himself as the great Redeemer and not as the Creator. Why doesn't God introduce himself as the Creator of the universe, Avi? What came first? Creation of the world or redemption from Egypt?
Creation.
So why doesn't God say, I'm Hashem, your God, that created heaven and earth?
Because they weren't there for that one.
So Yehuda Levi says, we weren't there for that, right? God makes a statement that he can back up. But millions of you guys saw the actual Exodus. I'm Hashem, your God, that took you out of Egypt. I redeemed you. That you saw. The creation you didn't see. And therefore God introduced himself as the Redeemer and not as what? Creator. As the Creator. This is Yehuda Levi's explanation. Rabbeinu Bachai says something, right? Says something amazing. Yehuda Levi says something amazing. He says, why Redeemer and not Creator? This is just amazing. The mitzvah Pidyon Shvuyin, the Rambam says that the greatest mitzvah of all is to redeem a captive. It's Gemara Babasa, page 8. Avram, it's called a mitzvah rabbah.
Oh, wow.
And the Rambam says it's the greatest mitzvah of all is called Pidyon Shvuyin, is to redeem what? A captive. So the question is, the Rambam says as follows, Ein mitzvah gedola v'rabba. Now the Rambam does not engage in hyperbole. Is that right? Hyperbole? Hyperbole, thank you. He says, Ein mitzvah gedola v'rabba. There is no great and awesome mitzvah kipidyon shvuyin, as redeeming a captive. If that's the case about Avram, the last time I checked the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvot, I couldn't find it. Rambam, you're saying that the greatest mitzvah of all is redeem a captive. So how come in your Sefer HaMitzvot it ain't there?
It must be there under,
what?
It must be there under a different...
Says Rabbeinu Bachai, it's there. It's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I'm Hashem, your God, that redeemed you when you were a captive. Therefore, God says that. In the Anoich Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah. To recognize God, acknowledge Him, means to act like Him. He redeemed us when we were captives. It's a command for us to redeem captives. So Rabbeinu Bachai says, in the first of the 10 commandments, in the mitzvah to believe in God, which is counted in Sefer HaMitzvot, is embedded in that mitzvah, V'lachta b'drachav, as God redeemed us when we were captives, we have to redeem a fellow captive. And that's what we did to Gilad Shalit, even though it cost a terrible price, but there's no choice. It's first to the 10 commandments. And therefore God reveals Himself as the redeemer of captives and not as the creator, asking us or commanding us to emulate Him and also to redeem a captive. There are 2 more captives now in Gaza, right? 2. We have to do all we can to redeem them, but the question is, what, how much a price do you have to pay? So let's look at the 10 commandments, even though there are no such thing as 10 commandments, right? I'm brainwashed from the movie. Aseret HaDvarim. If you look at Exodus 20, Pasuk 5. See Exodus 20, Pasuk 5? Doing acts of kindness, I have it Pasuk 5. You might have it in English, Pasuk 6, Exodus 20. Doing loving kindness for thousands, right?
Mercy to thousands.
How does the Pasuk begin?
Mercy to thousands of generations.
And doing?
Of those that...
No, how does the verse begin?
20.
20 verse 5.
20 verse 5.
My God, and jealous God, punishing
No?
iniquity of the father.
So you probably have it 6, right? V'osa chesed, and doing acts of loving kindness for thousands.
But showing mercy to thousands.
It doesn't say showing, it says v'osa chesed. The Hebrew says v'osa chesed, and doing acts of loving kindness for thousands of generations. So who does acts of loving kindness? Who? That's what I would say, but Rashi doesn't agree with you, Elisheva. Rashi says, Sha'adam oseh, the acts of kindness that we do for God. Avi, take a pill and lie down. What do you mean? How can man do acts of kindness for God? That's what Rashi says. A very strange Rashi, Rabbi Abraham. Maybe you can ask Rabbi Osher. V'oseh chesed, I would say, doing acts of kindness for thousands that God does. But Rashi says, no, sha'adam oseh, acts of kindness that man does for God, God keeps that for thousands of generations. David, say what? How, Rashi, what are you talking about? How could man do an act of kindness for Hashem?
By being kind to each other.
Wow. Avram hit a grand slam. Beinu B'chai said that you say. Every time you do an act of chesed for a fellow Jew, God says it's a twofer, Avram. Jews love bargains. Buy one, get 2. You do an act of chesed for a fellow Jew, said Rabbeinu B'chai, based on this Rashi, it's a twofer. You're doing an act of chesed for the person and for Hashem. Because the person has a godly soul inside of him. The tzelem Elohim, the chelik Elohim imal. And therefore, osa chesed she'adam oseh. Yes, every time you do an act of chesed for a person, God says it's also an act of chesed for the Creator. That's pretty amazing. Because all of us have part of God inside of us. The godly soul, the tzelem Elohim, the chelik Elohim imal. So we have to remember that. Mitzvah tzrichas kavana. Every time you smile on somebody, doesn't cost any money, doesn't cost you any money. You do a small act of kindness, David, you have to have in mind you're doing a kindness for whom?
Hashem.
Hashem. Isn't that an incredible idea? Rashi. And Rabbeinu B'chai is learning pshat, what Rashi means over here. Sha'adam oseh, that the human being does. That's pretty amazing.
I have a question for that.
What, yeah?
When you refer to kindness, are you referring to kindness to Jews or to everybody?
Oh, that's a good question. It's Jews plus any decent human being that keeps the Noahide religion. Yes, and good question. The Chafetz Chaim says something amazing.
Any decent Jews.
The Chafetz Chaim says that all the laws, I'm glad you brought that up. The Chafetz Chaim wrote a book called Sefer HaMitzvot. And he says that all the acts of kindness that the Torah commands us to do to a fellow Jew include a righteous Gentile. We have to treat a righteous Gentile with the same courtesy and kindness as a fellow Jew. So says the Chafetz Chaim in his Sefer HaMitzvot.
What about an unrighteous Jew?
Unrighteous Jew?
Just saying you're not
Every
going to
Jew is
also.
righteous.
Like
Yeah, you
a
got to keep
dollar.
the Noah, for the Noahide laws as an act of kindness to teach the Noahide laws.
That's right.
That's one of
Thank you. That brought up that the Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvot says that every time you teach the Noahide religion to non-Jews,
Yeah.
you're doing the mitzvah of Ahavat Hashem.
That's true.
Now what about
And mine is in Sefer HaMitzvot. If you teach the Noahide religion to non-Jews,
That's right.
you're doing the mitzvah of Ahavat Hashem because you're sharing Him with the world.
And what about
We are the world.
what about Christians and Muslims? Are they considered followers of Noahide laws?
Well, that's
Not very complicated.
No, they're idolaters.
Muslims are.
Not righteous.
Muslims are, right?
Well, they keep one.
If they don't
break the other
commit murder, right?
They keep
Right.
break the other seven. So they make one law.
Right.
They break the other seven. They keep one out of the seven. Break the other six.
That's interesting what you're saying, Rabbi. Muslims are,
Muslims are monotheists.
right,
So therefore, the Rambam and Rabbi Yosef Paskins, no problem to go into a mosque.
right.
And every time you daven in the Marital Machpelah, you're davening in a mosque. You go into Marital Machpelah and you're davening there. The whole thing is written in Arabic and green. It's a mosque. So there's not a problem to daven there.
Jewish,
What?
covered all the Jewish things up.
That's right.
With their Muslim stuff.
But we're davening there.
The Jews were gone for many years.
Okay, there's not a problem. Because we worship the same God. We worship, that's the irony. We worship the same God. We even call him by the same name, Allah, El. The same name. The Rambam says in Moreh Nevuchim, the phrase Allah Akbar is a holy phrase. You can't say it in the men's room. What does Allah Akbar mean? Ha'el, Ha'godol, Ha'gibor, V'Hanora.
Doesn't it mean God?
That's what it means.
They killed.
That's the paradox. That's the paradox of it, right? But anyway, I don't get off the formula. Now,
Don't get off the phone.
now, the 10 Commandments is a formula for marital bliss, Evelyn. An amazing Rashi over here. Rashi says an act of chesed for thousands of generations, right? But we know the world doesn't exist for thousands of generations. So Rashi says it's an example. He will reward for thousands of generations, but he only punishes the children only up to what? The 4th generation. So Rashi says, how much is 4 into 2,000?
250.
500, no? Who's good in math? How much is 4 into 2,000? 500. So Rashi says, it means that the Midah Tovah, God's Midah Tovah, is 500 times better than what? Greater than his Midah of punishment. So the 2,000, not to be taken literally, the world is not going to be 2,000 generations, only 6,000 years, but it means, Rashi says, Sarah, that the Midah Tovah is 500 times better and greater than his Midah of what? Of punishment. So what's the message for us today? That God rewards and praises us 500 times more than what? Than he punishes us. So why should I care? Fasten your seatbelts. What is the, Abraham, what's the message here for marital bliss? Husband and wife, right? We do something wrong, right? We do something wrong, and some spouses keep reminding us that we did something wrong, right? Over and over again. We do something nice, you know. I thanked you already. So what are you making a big deal about it? You did a nice thing. I thanked you. But when we do something wrong, Bainish, what happens? Torah says just the opposite. When one spouse wrongs the other, okay. you point it out. But when we do an act of kindness for each other, we should praise it 500 times more than we do an act that's not so nice. What a powerful message. The praise and the thank you should be 500 times greater than the put down. Who taught us that? Hashem. I think that's the key to marital bliss. Right?
Tell them you love them.
Right?
You hate them.
We must applaud and thank our spouses 500 times more than we want criticize them for doing something wrong. But we do, I do just the opposite. But this is what the Torah is teaching over here. Otherwise, what is Rashi pointing out over here? Pretty amazing. Right? Reward and applaud your spouse 500 times more than when you have to criticize. And not the other way around. And not the other way around. I'll point out an amazing Ramban over here. Let's go to the Ten Commandments again. Exodus 20, verse 13. Do not covet. This is only for married people. Exodus 20, verse 13. Do not covet your friend's house. Do not covet your friend's wife. Right? Does that say that? No?
You should not kill it.
Oh, I have a different order. Maybe you have 13 there? 14.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
You shall not covet, let's zero in on that. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. What does covet mean?
Desire.
Desire, right? Says the Ramban. Now don't, look at the holy Ramban says this. Do not covet your neighbor's wife. Just like there's a prohibition not to, the Ramban says on this verse.
He says, okay, here.
I didn't say, Lo tachmod eshes rayecho. Do not desire the wife of your friend. That's a prohibition. Says the Ramban, something amazing. Just like there's a prohibition not to desire the wife of your friend, there's a mitzvah to desire your own wife. That's what he says. Lo tachmod eshes rayecha. The prohibition to desire the wife of your friend, a married woman, but your own wife, it's a mitzvah to desire her and want her. Wow. The Torah is all about lovey-dovey. First mitzvah in the Torah is what? To get married and have children. That's pretty amazing. Now, here you have Shabbos. You have remember the Shabbos to keep it holy. Zachor, Exodus 20, verse 7. Remember the Shabbos to keep it holy. But the second version says observe the Shabbos to keep it holy. In Deuteronomy, there's a second version of the Ten Commandments. So which version did God speak, Sarah? Sama zocher b'dibur echad. Rashi points out, there's a pasuk in Tehillim 62. Achas diber Elohim, God spoke once. Shtayim shamati, I heard what? What does that mean? King David, you're mixing me up. Tehillim 62, I know, Sarah, you're studying Tehillim. Tehillim 62, verse 12. God spoke once, but I heard two versions. Avi, what does that mean? There are two versions of the Ten Commandments. One here and one in Deuteronomy. Both versions, King David says in Psalm 62, God spoke once, but I heard twice. Both versions, God spoke simultaneously. Here it says, remember the Shabbos, and the second version it says what? Observe the Shabbos. B'dibur echad. What does that mean, b'dibur echad? In one saying. What's the message? What does remember the Shabbos mean? Kiddush and Havdalah. What does observe the Shabbos mean? After you make Kiddush, don't drive to the mall or turn on the TV or the internet. Never. See, you cannot attach from the other. Zochar v'shomer. Observe the Shabbos by making Kiddush and going to shul, but shomor. But when you come home from shul and you make Kiddush, you're not allowed to turn on the idiot box or the internet or drive to the mall.
It's like a marriage too.
It's zochar v'shomer. B'dibur echad. B'dibur echad.
One without the other.
You can't have one without the other.
So, again, you said that...
So if you make Kiddush and you drive to the mall, according to Rashi, you're canceling out the Kiddush.
Right.
Because it's what? It's what? God spoke with Dibur Echad, as King David says.
Doesn't God give you some credit?
I don't know. According to Rashi, it doesn't seem to be. It's a cancel. It's a cancel. Maybe that justifies him because a person thinks, well, I made Kiddush, now I can drive to the mall or go to the movies. It puts a bee in the bonnet.
In North America, a lot of Jews, they do Shabbos Kiddush.
Right.
Let's say they're old and they can't walk or they have problems, they drive to shul.
Well, that's wrong. That's wrong. They should daven at home. So let them daven at home.
That's different. If they're old, they can't make it.
They're not allowed to drive to shul. They have daven.
Those people that they made Kiddush the night before, it's wiped out.
They should daven at home. They're not allowed to drive to shul. Only if your life is in danger.
90% of the Jews drive.
So they don't know. They're brainwashed. Right? They should daven at home. Not a dress equate to Shabbos, only if your life is in danger.
Rabbi, what about non-Jews keeping a day, a Sabbath day?
Well,
Are they required to as well?
no, that's a non-Jews not allowed to keep the Shabbos. Shabbos is our bride. Boi kala. Boi kala. What do you say Friday night? Come, my bride. Shabbos is the bride of Am Yisrael. If a non-Jew keeps Shabbat, the Gemara said it's like spiritual adultery. Boi kala, my bride. Don't butt in, okay? So therefore, a ger that's studying to be a Jew has to flick a bick. He's studying to be a Jew, he has to flick a bick on Shabbos. Or tear toilet paper, right? As long as he doesn't take the cut and the dip, or the dip and the cut. The dip, first the cut. Cut and then the dip. Then he has to flick a bick, right? He has to... What? Okay. Now, Shabbos. Look how Shabbos is in the Torah. This is amazing. Exodus 20, verse 8. 6 days you shall work and do all of your work. How can you do all of your work in 6 days? You're building the Empire State Building. How could the Torah command you in Exodus 20, verse 8, 6 days you shall work and do all of your work? You can't finish the Empire State Building in 6 days. So Rashi said, when Shabbos comes along, in your mind it has to be that what?
No thinking.
It's finished. Shabbos is a taste of Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, you think about work. No. Shabbos, you're supposed to have like an out-of-body experience. You're supposed to be free. Thank God, one day where I can focus on what? On my neshama, on God. So you don't even think about work. So make believe as the work is done. And the 7th day is Shabbos. The Ovis the Rab Nosson says something amazing. The Ovis the Rab Nosson is a Tanaic work written by a Haredi rabbi 2,000 years ago. Ovis the Rab Nosson. And he points out as follows. Shabbos is mentioned many, many times in the Torah. It's always prefaced with what? 6 days you shall work and keep the Shabbos. Shabbos is never mentioned on its own. Never. Whenever Shabbos is mentioned, Avi, it's always, what's the word, prefaced or prefaced? Prefaced. Prefaced with what? 6 days you shall work. Says, Ovis the Rab Nosson as follows. Just like there's a mitzvah to rest on Shabbos, there's a mitzvah to what? Work 6 days. Who said this? Ovis the Rab Nosson. A Tanaic work of 2,000 years ago, written by a very Haredi rabbi. It's part of the Talmud. And therefore, Shabbos is never mentioned alone in the Torah. It's always prefaced with work, just like there's a mitzvah to rest on Shabbos, there's a mitzvah to work during the week. Some people say, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's made up. But work is a mitzvah. And therefore, the Torah always attaches this to what? To observing Shabbos. Shabbos is never mentioned on its own.
Can learning be considered work?
Can learning... If you get a, you get a salary. Right? You get a salary. But not to be a schnorrer, right?
It's economically okay.
Right.
If you don't need to.
So when the
schnorrer. Not the schnorrer, right?
When the non-Jew adopts the Sabbath, what are they talking about?
A non-Jew can only adopt the Shabbos when he becomes a Ger Tzedek. Otherwise, you're not allowed to keep the Shabbos, right?
They say they have 10 commandments. How can they?
Why? No, they don't have 10 commandments. They have 7. Keep the 7, go to heaven. They have 7, not 10. We don't have 10 commandments. We have 10 topics, 10 categories. And they have 7 categories.
Christians, 10 commandments. What's that?
There are no 10 commandments. There are 7, right? They have 7 categories, and we have 10 categories. But they're not allowed to observe the Shabbos, right? They're not supposed to, because Shabbos is only what? Shabbos is only for us. Now, at the show, it's amazing. Why do Jews shuckle when we learn a daven? Why do we shuckle? Take a look. It says in by Shvi, Exodus 20, verse 14, the people saw the sounds. How do you see the sounds? And it says that they what? The people saw and they swayed. And they swayed.
Where are you reading that?
I'm reading Exodus 20, verse 14. I have it, verse 14. All the people saw the sounds and the lightning and the kol shofar. The people saw Vayunu and said they trembled. Trembled and they stood far away. Vayunu means to sway. We swooned. We were so raptured in ecstasy when God spoke to us that we swooned and we swayed. Says the Balaturim, why do we shuckle when we daven and when we study Torah? We're trying that magic moment. How to get that in? He says we're trying to capture that magic moment at Har Sinai when we swooned with love and ecstasy. So when we daven and when we study Torah, we're trying to what? Recapture that magic moment when we and God were so what? Madly in love with each other. And whenever we study Torah and we daven, we try to get back to that virtual magic moment. And that's the Balaturim reason why we shuckle. And other religions don't shuckle, right? You ever go into a church? Do they shuckle? The Muslims shuckle too? They copied from us. The Muslims got it from us. What? I think they got it from us, right?
Rabbi, we don't have the same physical experience.
Right.
As those who were before receiving the Torah.
Yeah.
Because they saw the sound and they
we were there.
Heard
Every soul was there.
Right.
But we do not have that physical capability.
Well, we're trying to recapture. We're trying to recapture that, right? That magic moment of Har Sinai,
For more of Rabbi Sprecher's teachings, visit RabbiSprecher.com.